So it's Key103, it is a Tuesday morning. Hello, hope you're well. And in the studio now is a man who is one part of One Republic, and also, if you've ever listened to a record in the charts, he's probably produced it or at least worked on it. Good morning, Ryan Tedder.
Good morning.
Good morning. So how are you in Manchester?
Lovely, man. Doing great, actually.
Have you been here before?
I have, yeah, quite a few times, actually. And so it's cool to come back. It's been a few years, but it's cool because when you've been to a place enough, I kind of have my little routine now in different parts of the UK. Like the pub I go to in Bristol, the pub that I go to in Manchester.
Are you allowed to say the pub you go to in Manchester?
Am I not? Am I not?
No, you can do, yeah.
Can you tell us?
Am I allowed to say? Well, this is going to sound probably really touristy and a bit cliche, but the Old Wellington. I love history, and the older the better. Because I think America's so young still.
Nowhere does pubs like England.
Nobody touches
they don't.
it. Nobody
They don't,
touches it. I was at the oldest pub in Australia about 6 days ago in
Which
Sydney.
one? Oh,
in
I've
Sydney.
been.
It's called the Fortune of War.
That's right.
Right there on the circular quay, in the rocks, and it's interesting because you figure, okay, it's a British Commonwealth, settled by the British. And yet, it was so distinctly not. It was Australian. You can't explain it, but it completely looked different.
You just have to have a schooner instead of a pint.
Yeah, and their pints are these short, fat
What is
glasses.
that all about? Give me the biggest pint.
Yeah, they call it the
find.
Aussie pint or something like that.
Yeah.
I love you two connecting over the size of pints. Because Americans I've met tend to be into real ale. Instead of they're all into real ale now, aren't they? Is that you?
Yes, I am definitely that. That's me, yeah.
And what ale did you drink last night?
Well, last night it was St. Patty's Day, man. So I had a Guinness.
Oh yeah.
We were doing, and I do have to say though, I've been to Ireland a ton of times, and it is much like having a Newcastle probably tastes better in Newcastle. Having Guinness in Ireland tastes better than the UK, tastes better than the US.
It's like a meal in a glass.
It is.
Isn't it?
It is. When we were touring in Ireland a few years ago, and accidentally ended up on St. Patrick's Day in Dublin.
Accidentally.
Good accident.
Well, no, we weren't. You get on tour and it becomes a fog. You forget what day it is.
Yeah.
And we look at the calendar, we're like, all right, it's March 16th. We're pulling into Dublin. Wait a minute, it's March 6th. Tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. And we ended up at the Brazen Head, which is the oldest pub, shock surprise, in Dublin. And it's not in Temple Bar. It's a lot less touristy. It's around the corner. We started drinking at noon. We stopped at 2 a.m.
God.
That is good going.
And it was Guinness the whole time. We didn't
Wow.
eat. We didn't eat.
Were you made of iron after that?
Pretty much.
Did you go to the loo afterwards
Yeah.
for several days? Or?
We were hitting the loo.
Do you have tour bus rules, which is
All the loos.
no large jobs in the toilet?
We do, unless you have your own bus. It's like, there are those. It's disgusting, but you know what the name of.
I love that we're talking about poo with him.
Yeah, most tour buses, you can't, do your business number 2 in it, but they do have specially made toilets that do process that.
Okay.
And here's the worst thing. You know what they're called?
What?
Grinders.
Oh man! I thought that was a new app that people had. It gives a whole new,
That is an app.
whole new revelation for me.
Well, that's exactly.
Do you have a grinder on your tour bus?
I do. I've had a grinder.
If I was you, I would demand a grinder.
Yeah,
that would be on the top of my.
You don't want to be
list.
trying to pull over like you're in the middle of southern Holland, on a Monday night at midnight.
No toilets there.
You're not going to be able to pull over and find a toilet.
No.
Holland is it's legally allowed to poo on the street anyway.
It is actually.
Now the reason you are here today is because you'll be back in Manchester when for the tour?
April 24th.
Do you still enjoy touring? I mean, it's a question I ask a lot, but some people say, we don't mind touring, but we prefer to be in the studio. Do you like the feeling of touring?
I do like the feeling of touring, and primarily because I think it's a dream job, because I get to do what I would want to do anyway in my free time. Like if I was on vacation, or if I had, a normal job and then I had a month off for the summer or whatever, I would want to go to a country and hit all the high points of that country anyway, because that's just, to me, that's fun.
It's got to be pretty hard, though, because you're married, you've got a son.
Yeah.
Do they come with you?
They come with me as often as possible. We have a rule pretty much, which was you don't go more than 3 weeks, and usually it's about 2 weeks.
Okay.
We've, learned from a lot of other bands that there's a certain time period where if you're apart long enough, you go back and it's just awkward and weird, and it's just not good. And let's be honest.
I'd love that with my husband because
let's have 3 weeks apart from him.
No, but so I'm fairly newly married. I've only been married like 18 months, and because I'm quite independent, I remember turning around to him a few months ago and I said, "Now I really want to change our bedroom, so I'd really like a new bed." some new curtains and a feature wall. So I just put some paper on it. And he thought about it and he went, no. And I went,
wait a minute.
No, what do you mean no? He said, well, there's nothing wrong with what's there. I said, I know, but it's been there 6 years. I want something different. So the compromise was that I could have all of those things, but if I paid for them. And I said, well, that's not a compromise.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it? 'Cause you're going to
interesting.
get in the bed and shut the curtains.
Yeah, but he's got to get in a bed that he might not want.
Well, that's exactly the truth. He said, well, I'm going to get like the biggest TV ever. And you know, we'll go halves on it. And I said, well, I don't want to do that. He said, well, that's exactly the same. So I'm thinking if he was away like 3 weeks, I could just go.
You could just take care of it. Well, I mean, I'll come home and there will be, oh, by the way, I bought this and I changed that and we painted this. But fortunately, most guys, I think, for the most part, are just kind of like,
easy life.
all right, whatever.
Yeah,
You know, it's just, you just roll with it.
Yes.
And if
Makes life easier.
Yeah,
I
if
think.
you make the woman happy, then you're happy, and vice versa. So yeah, but I fly them out. I flew them out to Sydney for 8 days. We were down in Australia, and then I flew Sydney to Stockholm, and then came here, and then when we hit Paris, I think, and I have family in Belgium, so they'll fly out, you know, in 3 weeks, and they'll be there for 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, she gets the fun job because I have more frequent flyer miles than we could spend in a lifetime, and so she just looks at our calendar and says, "Ooh,
That looks nice.
South of France, I'm going there. Ooh, New Zealand, I'm going there." And
Has she ever tried to talk you into touring places she's not been to?
You know,
How about a tour of the Maldives?
She said no. She asked. She said, "When are you going back to South Africa? I'd like to go to Cape Town." And we toured there a few years ago, and I said, "I don't know, probably sometime 2013." She's like, "All right, well, let me know."
I'm in.
Now, the single is called If I Lose Myself. Am I right? I don't always believe stuff that I have read on Wikipedia. It's a terrible thing to do.
You should.
Has anyone...
Ryan updates his own Wikipedia.
Do you?
It's all
I'm doing it
true.
right now.
Has there any been any outrageous lies on it about you?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not so much outrageous as it is just inaccurate. Like, I mean, I always get asked. I can always tell when someone's Wikipedia, which is what I would do if I was in an interview, because you do learn. A lot of times you read it, you go, "Oh, I had no idea they did." Oh,
It's kind of a good place to get loads of info, isn't it? In one.
It's open source.
place.
You know,
Yeah.
the world can update it, and they, you know, your super fans try to keep it accurate, but like I can't seem to get. And he worked with Whitney Houston, and like there's like a handful of people that they claim we've worked with, or certain things that we've done or that I've done, and they're just not true at all.
I got one fact off there. And let's see.
It actually is that big.
Let's see.
Oh wait, what was the fact?
Yeah, I'll scrap that bit.
It was about your earlobes.
Oh, my earlobes. Okay.
No, it was that when you were like a student, you
Yeah.
worked in a shop that I always believed from watching Friends for years was a false shop.
Pottery Barn.
Was it? Did you work there?
Yeah, I did.
That's the best shop.
You
in
like
the
Pottery Barn?
world.
Wait, you don't have it in the UK?
No, we don't.
You can. I've tried ordering. You
Oh,
can
my
get it
goodness.
sent. But I went to New York once, discovered Pottery Barn, and thought, oh my god, this is the one where Rachel bought all this furniture from in
That's right.
Friends.
That's right.
And Phoebe didn't like it because
Yep.
it wasn't like from a genuine source. I spent loads of money in there, and then had to spend about 400 quid to try and get it all back on
To
the
ship
plane.
it. Yeah. I worked at Pottery, but that was my last legitimate job in Nashville while I was doing music. And I quit because I was in the warehouse unboxing.
Did you get a discount?
I did, and I barely
Do you
had
know
enough
anyone
money
there
to
now? Could they help
you
me
know,
out?
I don't, and I got to tell you, you don't want to be shopping at Pottery Barn.
Oh, no,
now that
why
I worked
now?
in the warehouse, I mean, we quickly identified what was total rubbish and what was actually nice.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do any of that stuff in the U.S., you want to go to a place called Restoration Hardware.
I love the sound of it
that's,
already.
That's probably the most legit spot, like for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I worked there, and I quit because the manager walked back one day, and I was on the phone, for 5 seconds. I was on the phone, like dealing with a songwriting situation and like, to do with my music career. And she said, she called me out and got upset. And I said, look, I didn't even take my 20-minute break. I'm just dealing with, this is my life here. And she said, well, there's no room for this here. And I said, okay, cool, I quit. She said, you can either do this or you can whatever. And I was just standing in front of her. I quit. She's like, what?
I mean, as much as I love Pottery Barn, I think you probably made the right decision.
I think so. I mean, it's like cheaply
I mean, you can't go
made-
back now.
She must feel like such an idiot now.
Cheaply made imported Chinese like child labor.
Don't knock Pottery Barn.
I could, and yeah.
Phoebe was right.
Yes.
Has that situation ever made it into a song that you've written?
No, I mean not necessarily, but I mean I talk about. I mean, just like anybody, I didn't come from money whatsoever, and kind of went out on my own when I was 17 and moved out of the house, and so just like anybody else, laying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking, my God, how am I going to pay for this apartment? How am I going to pay for this car? How am I going to get a car? Like, all those things that people freak out about. So I put that a lot into songs.
Is it difficult to do that now? Now you have made some money, you're successful. Is it as difficult to write?
I don't think so. I mean, I had to get over that hump specifically on this album because, I had to think, once you've had a measure of success, you start to think as an artist, well, what people want to hear about: pain, struggle, heartbreak, that kind of thing. So then what's my perspective? What do I have to talk about that people aren't going to say, oh, well, it's easy for you to say, blah, blah, blah. And then I think about all the bands out there who are, who have gone well beyond where we're at and have, look at U2. What does Bono have left to write about? But somehow he still manages to write about
because
love
even
and
world hunger.
Even pop stars still have heartache in their life. You still lose people that you love, and so you can still relate in so many ways.
And you still think about, I don't know about everybody else, but like sometimes I'll lay awake at night and I'll think, oh my God, I'm in my 30s now. At some point I'm going to die, and this is my one shot go at this entire thing. And you start thinking about all these kind of fatalistic things that'll keep you up at night, or you start thinking about, oh my God, she's pregnant. How are we going to? What am I going to do? You know what I mean? All those things that people think about. So I write about that. I try to. We have this song called, If I Lose Myself, which is the single, is about. I have a crazy fear of going down in an airplane, and that was.
And with all your air miles, you're significantly higher risk.
And I did a song with Sebastian with the Swedish House Mafia guys last year called "The Calling," Lose My Mind, and have done a number of doing things with him right now. And so I got inspired by that kind of music. And then lyrically, though, I couldn't just write a song about going out on a Friday night. That's just not me. And so it sounds like this celebration of life, kind of let's go crazy this weekend song, but it's about going down an airplane. And then another song about remembering being literally when I worked at Pottery Barn, laying awake, being like, oh my God, this can't be my life. Which I think everybody at some point, you sit there in your bed or you're driving to work going, I can't believe I'm driving here. I can't believe this is actually my life. Is this it? I'm 27 and I feel like the rest of my life's been already written out, and this can't be all there is.
It's nice to know that happens to everyone, I think, sometimes, that it's not just you. Apologise.
Yeah.
Do you...
For what?
It's too late.
Because you were late. No.
Oh, was that you? Yeah. I smelled something. I didn't know.
Do you prefer the version that you did, or do you prefer the version that Timbaland remixed?
I prefer the version that we did. Timbaland's phenomenally talented. He's amazing. I can't say enough things about him, but our version, because Apologize was a double-edged sword. You shouldn't, if you're trying to break as a band, which when we started, before that song came out, we were like an alternative rock band. My favorite band was Doves, and that was, interestingly enough, from Manchester. And Elbow, and Doves was my favorite band. I worshiped that band, and so I was more akin to, we were like, all right, how do we capture? We want to have like a Doves vibe. That was like our favorite band. This is like 2003, and so our first single sounds like, honestly, sounds like a Doves song. Sounds like an American band listening to Doves, and then we got dropped by Columbia Records, and when Interscope picked the album back up, they found Apologize, which was going to be our third single, and it's not the remix, and Timbaland remixed it and they said, all right, we're going to break you at rock radio with your Dove sounding song, and then a couple others, and then we'll get to Apologize. They remixed it, put it on Timbaland's album, and they buried it. It was like track 10, right? And they put it on there just to get our names out there, as you do on a remix album. Well, the second the album came out, every single DJ and radio person in the world gravitated right to Apologize, and it was like, they said, we promise we won't put it out. We promise we won't put it out. Because naturally, you don't want your first single as a rock band to be a remix on a hip-hop producer's album. And it ended up coming out and breaking every sales record, every radio. It's the number one most played song in the U.S. in the last decade. And that shouldn't, that's awesome in one way as a songwriter, but as a band, it's backwards. Like, you shouldn't have, your first single should not be that big. It shouldn't.
Well, you're setting yourself a pretty high task after that.
It's like Gautier.
Yeah.
He's screwed.
Yeah.
Sorry, buddy. Go spend that money on some,
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's almost like the first album that comes out. If you win all the awards, there's certain artists you could pick out. Like Badly Drawn Boy is one of them. He is somebody with his first album out with the Bewilder Beast. He did so well with that album that it's almost going to be difficult to ever get back to that.
It is, and the problem is you can't. So the only way I know how to get around that is to walk away from it. We had to rebuild ourselves from the ground up, song by song. Stop and Stare, thankfully, became a big hit. Funny enough, in the UK, I didn't know this till years later. There was another song out when Apologize came out that blocked it from being number one. It was like the only country it wasn't a number one in. But then Stop and Stare was a number one. It was actually technically bigger than Apologize. But the difference is Apologize wouldn't go away. It was just like, to this day, I think I was driving around somewhere when I got in here and I hear it on the radio. I'm just like, you got to be kidding me.
Did you
There's a bit more PRS for me.
Yeah. Did you get sick of it though?
At this point, I mean, I don't know that I get sick of it, because that sounds like complaining about success. It's just always, it's bittersweet, because I hear it and I go, that's not really, the song, I wrote the song and we do it, the song's the same, but the whole, all that stuff, like that's not what we sound like. And so we've had to, song by song, define who we are in every country in the world and build it from the ground up. And it's taken us a lot longer, simply because of how we started.
Yeah,
it's kind of like if you spent 3 or 4 years painting the color blue because that's what you are, but no one knows your name, and then when they finally know your name, the color's red.
Yeah.
And you're like, well,
So is the rebuilding job done? You've got the new album Native out on the 25th of March here. Is the rebuilding job done?
It's to me, this is going to sound nuts. I've always thought of it as a 5-album process. And to me, this is definitely the biggest step in the right direction. The last album specifically, in the UK, we have more work to do because we're one of the only countries where we only really put out one song, All the Right Moves, and it kind of skyrocketed. And then it was kind of like, I'm not going to say our label walked away from it, but after that song, it was kind of like we were competing. We happened to be on the same record label with Lady Gaga and Black Eyed Peas.
I've heard of them.
Right when I've Got a Feeling came out, right when like Bad Romance came out. Yeah. And it was just kind of like Lady Gaga, Black Eyed Peas, One Republic. And so we didn't have a chance. And so this album is by far the biggest, best thing that I've been a part of.
And you've been working with Adele.
Yeah, I did Rumor Has It and Turning Tables.
Rumor Has It, unbelievable record.
Thank you.
Unbelievable
That was
record.
my favorite song.
She's just mad, isn't she?
To that date. She's so talented, it's ridiculous. And I'm so glad that it turned out the way it did. I mean, the goal was to do as well as 19, right? I was like obsessed with Chasing Pavements. Hometown Glory is my favorite though. That's my favorite song. And what Turning Tables was me trying to do, okay, let's do a Hometown Glory for this album. And then Rumor Has It was inspired by a Radiohead riff that I loved, and it was just, she came in and was a bit hungover, and we just had a laugh and did Rumor Has It. And she's amazing. She sang that song, by the way, in one take.
I can believe it.
Rumor Has It, I swear to God,
performances.
I've never seen it in my life. She walked in, she sat down, second day, she was like, my voice is a bit rough. And I was like, that's fine.
That's a good impression.
Is it?
Yeah.
And then she did that laugh that she does. And then I said, okay, well, let's just warm up. Let's just warm up, all right? I'm going to record this, and then we'll do like 10 passes of it. I hit record, and she just went into, she ain't real, she ain't going to be able to love you like I will. And one pass, that was it.
You say, jobs are good, and let's go to Nando's.
Did you get a safety? did you get a safety afterwards? Or
I did. I got a safety afterwards. Me and the engineer. The studio in LA where we did this song, to this day, that's become like the legend of that studio, because the engineer that was in the room, obviously she went and conquered 25 million, however many albums she sold, and it's become, anybody associated with recording it has stories about her. And I went back to the studio for the first time about 6 months ago, and I had this new young engineer. He goes, "Is it true?" I said, "Is what true?" Did Adele record a song in one take? The final copy. I said, "Yeah." I did a safety. We did a second take. She came in the room. We went back and listened to it, and we were like, "Nope, no, it's the first take."
First one's
and I was staring. I was like, "I don't even. You can go. I don't know what to say. You can go. You can leave." And she's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah." All right, then. And she walked off.
It's a shame she wasn't on an hourly rate.
I know, right? Seriously, that would have been phenomenal. And then I went back in and we overdubbed claps, and the intro to the song is actually me. Ooh, ooh, all that stuff, like the vocal pads. And yeah, man, she's brilliant. I'll tell you another British artist, Birdie. I'm doing a number of songs.
Skinny Love's amazing.
I'm working on her album right now, actually. And
is there anyone
that's going to be on your label, isn't it?
No, I wish.
Oh, right.
God, I wish. No, I don't think.
He'll work on that.
Yeah, no, she's on Warner. I think Warner Music.
Looking at
she's
the
amazing.
list of people that you've worked with, there's not many that you haven't. I mean, I've got here Maroon 5, Leona Lewis, of course, Kelly Clarkson, Beyonce, Jennifer Lopez, Gym Class Heroes, The Wanted. Is there anyone you haven't worked with that you want to work with?
There's a couple. Elton John, but I'm not going to say who it's with. But that's actually.
Is that going to happen?
That's probably going to happen.
How exciting.
He's
I've got some
such
really
a,
big glasses
He's
you
such
can
a
borrow.
good music guy. You can sit and talk records with him. He knows every record that's out right now. If you interviewed him, he would tell you about the top 10 on radio.
Is that why he's lasted so long, do you reckon? Because
Yeah.
He's a music guy.
He's changing with the times. And he's...
I sat and had a long talk with him and David. We did a show in New York. I've been friends with Justin Timberlake for about a decade.
Is that because
Is that 'cause of the MySpace?
with him?
Yeah, we co-own a restaurant together
Yeah.
in New York. But so we did a private gig at this restaurant. We reopened it and we did 5 songs. We happened to be in New York. Halfway through All the Right Moves, Elton walks in with David and Justin. And they all sit down, and I'm just like...
It's enough to put you off, isn't
Yeah,
it?
and then Maxwell's sitting front row. And it was he's surrounded by like 9 models. And it was like half of the Ukraine showed up, and then Maxwell and Elton. And then after I got summoned, I had a guy walk over and he goes, Elton John wants to talk to you. And I said, are you serious? He's like, yeah, come over here. So I go over and sit next to him for an hour, and he sat and talked about every record that was out, down to the most minute detail. He knew everything.
Was that scary?
It scared me to death. I was just like, you're impossible. How's it even possible? And he buys 20 albums a week on Sundays and goes through, reads all the liner notes, and
Wow.
he studies Billboard magazine. I mean, he knew the chart position. He knew every chart position of every song that I'd put out. It
Gosh.
blew my mind. It blew my
Yeah.
mind. But McCartney, that's the other. To answer your question, my favorite 3, like McCartney, and then I'm talking with Peter Gabriel's manager because growing
That'd
up,
be great.
Peter Gabriel was my favorite artist growing up. My uncle lived in Bath, and he ended up on a train with Peter one time going to a wedding, and talked for like 3 or 4 hours up in like Scotland. And he started sending me these Peter Gabriel albums import, and Peter Gabriel became my favorite, bar none, my favorite artist. So those would be the 3.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, it's been absolutely amazing having you in. Can't wait to have you back in Manchester, which is on the 25th of April.
Yes, 25th of April.
No tickets left.
I don't think so. I what we were told, it was 50% sold out on the first day. So
That's
and that was a
great.
month ago. So it just makes us feel amazing. We haven't been in the UK so long, and I think it might have surprised everybody, including us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Tedder!